Welcome to the NerdBrand Podcast, everybody. Today we're talking about make my logo bigger and maybe why it's not as important as you think. So, tune in. Welcome to the NerdBrand Podcast, everybody. I'm Jason. That's Mitch. That's John. Today we're talking about make my logo bigger and why this is not as important as you think. But before we get into that, yes, we don't have a guest today. It's just us.
I feel lonely.
I know. There's like a box missing on the video. It's like, well, who's going to show up? Who's going to show up? Well, no one.
Who's going to help us promote this?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that we have had just a slew of guests that we love. And, I think this is just a week that kind of escaped us for booking is all it was. Because I think we did have somebody booked, but then they had to change the schedule. And then that's why this week got left open. But then I was like, you know what? It's good to kind of take a break for it just to be us three. And that's why we don't have a guest today. But next week, tune in if you want and see Diana Richardson come back from SEMrush. And we're going to talk e-commerce SEO with her and some other stuff that happened in 2020 that, kind of got missed because the plague. So you can tune in for that. We'll also have a few other guests that are coming up. And if you didn't catch the last episode, go check that out with Jason Bernard, who is the brand cert guy. Lots of useful information. If you're still curious about SEO, Google Mum, which is the latest algorithm release, and what in the world is natural language processing and how does that affect or will affect your site, copy, SEO strategy, all of that good stuff. Go check that episode out and then make sure you like, subscribe, click the bell so you get notified of the latest episodes if you are on YouTube. And if you want to know more about how we can help you with those services and those things, contact this guy that's down here at the bottom. And so
maybe Mitch is at the bottom for me. So
Mitch is at the bottom for you. Well, for me, you're at the bottom. Mitch is over here because it reverses the camera. So I'm sure everybody listening and watching right now is like, thanks for telling us about the mechanics of Zoom, Jason.
Contact Jonathan. Contact me.
Contact Jonathan Payne at jonathan@nerdbrandagency.com.
There you go.
All right, let's get into it. What's the brand bit, John? What you got?
It's a little slow in the news lately. I know toward the beginning of the year, we had tons of exciting new rebrands with GM and Wendy's and McDonald's coming in behind them to compete, but a little bit slower these days. And this week, Surveymonkey has rebranded to Momentv. Their parent company has rebranded. And it's really just a move to kind of compete with Qualtrics a little more significantly. Qualtrics is, I think, quite a bit lesser known, but in the enterprise space and higher ed, those areas, Qualtrics is really the go-to, surprisingly. But Surveymonkey's trying to, in a brand strategy sense, they feel like they've gotten locked down as Surveymonkey's like this DIY, every man's survey tool, when in reality they have a lot of tools and resources for enterprise level customer experience management. So they're trying to reposition more in that direction as Qualtrics has. And I think it just kind of goes to show that even a brand with as much equity as Surveymonkey, they're super well known. One of the go-to survey tools, probably the one with the most brand awareness, still feels the need to go through a repositioning, a rebranding,
But is it a renaming? I mean, is Surveymonkey renaming to that, or it's just the parent company and Surveymonkey still exists? And
as far as I understood, that's another element of the rebrand is, frankly, they didn't do a super good job, at least from my perspective, of communicating what's going on and who the new brand is. But Surveymonkey will remain as kind of that frontline consumer use, DIY self-use tool. And then the actual Surveymonkey, like the stock ticker, is going to change to Momentv. So it's kind of a parent company corporate change, but also Momentv is going to be that enterprise level piece.
Yeah, because Momentv is not very memorable right now. It'll take it a while probably to catch, and they'll have to push a lot of PR and a lot of just putting out stuff on content channels to be able to get people to realize that who they are and what that is, where it's from, because it just kind of comes out of nowhere. SurveyMonkey is just, it's been around for a long time, and the name of itself is fun.
Right.
Oh
You know?
yeah.
So I
if
mean,
you
yeah.
if you look at brand names as word pictures, I mean, it functions very well in that sense. I mean, it immediately creates an image of your head of exactly what it says. A survey monkey. I mean, what that looks like. I guess you can look at their logo and kind of get an idea, but still, it creates an image in your head immediately. You hear something like Momentv, and it's like it's a made up word, which many brand names are, but it doesn't immediately conjure up any kind of tangible, relatable.
Yeah.
I think
imagery.
that's kind of reading some of the quotes and stuff. They felt that survey is not quite the right terminology for what they're trying to do. It's customer experience management.
Yeah.
And that's really what Qualtrics has anchored their brand on. And that speaks a lot better to, the C-suite, the high level brand managers and things like that, because they're about the customer experience, not necessarily just getting some feedback. So I think that's kind of the intention, and get away from this idea that you're just checking a few questions off and doing a survey.
Yeah, I get it. I think it's, I mean, I totally understand it. It's kind of like MailChimp, MailChimp does more than just sending email newsletters. And so MailChimp, you kind of have another fun one there that has a purpose in the name. And it's like NerdBrand. It's like ours, we're nerds that like branding, but we also do marketing. We also do web development. We also do all these other things that you get from other places. But without the brand fixed first, we don't really have a base or foundation to work on very well. So yeah, names are very important. And, we'll probably do a podcast on brand naming. We do that right now for clients and in fact, we have one right now we're working with that we're working on brand naming for. But yeah, it just is surprising to me because, and I get it. Like you said, it speaks to C-suite people. So business intelligence or BI is really hot, and you got CX, like you're talking about customer experience, so CX. So like years ago, it was UX for user experience, and it was like, well, user experience isn't necessarily web design. Shocker. So it's sort of like another acronym that we're going to see picking up momentum, I'm sure. Get it? See what I did there?
Yeah.
See what I did?
That is the only thing I can think of with Momentv is that they're trying to get the customer experience, give it momentum. I don't know, but that might be a bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
Kind of an aside, I'm really curious to what sparked the primate kind of motif for that space. SurveyMonkey, MailChimp.
There's some others.
Uh,
Does Mandrill have I thought they had like a mascot or something like that.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
Mandrill's kind of like a baboon.
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never paid attention. I mean, usually for those that don't know, Mandrill is a sending service for email. So if you have a website and it's on a server and you're like, I don't know why the email's not going through, blah, blah, you probably need something like Mandrill or SendGrid. SendGrid is another one that's popular. You probably need to engage with that and use that if you have a high volume of your website receiving and sending emails out for services or inquiries or whatever that may be. Shameless plug for us. Our server and sites that we have Mandrill already on it. You're already good. You ain't got to worry about it. It's included in the fee. Done. Bada boom, bada bing. See that little thing?
It's bada bing, bada boom.
Bada bing. It's bada bing, bada boom. Yeah, that's kind of like when I got like Matthew McConaughey's like, all right, for like something else. I can't remember what it was that I did, but I get stuff wrong like that all the time. That's what makes me endearing. All right.
We all
said.
Anyways, all right. We are going to dive into a little bit of the nerd news because it's the NerdBrand podcast. Usually when we have guests on, we don't get into kind of like nerdy things. So if you're not a nerd, you don't really care about these kinds of things. You can go, if you're on YouTube, click the chapter link, skip ahead. It's all good. It won't hurt our feelings any. But right now, Mitch is going to share some nerd news.
Loki launched this week.
Can't go
and that's all that we have to say.
because Mitch hasn't seen it yet. So Mitch is giving us because on something he's not seen. That's not how this works.
No, pretty much universally from empire.com to, Variety, all the major entertainment sites have pretty much across the board given it glowing reviews. The consensus seems to be the first episode takes a little while to kind of get the momentum building, but you know how it is when that first episode, when you first start telling a story, it has to do all that heavy lifting in the beginning to kind of bring you along and get you familiar. But everything I've read thereafter says that it's probably the best of any of the Marvel series so far. What's funny is if you look at the Marvel series that have launched on Disney Plus, each one that's launched, they've all said sort of the same thing. This is great. This is the best thing Marvel's done. Then comes the next thing. This is great. This is the best thing Marvel has done.
Because nobody's buying articles on those networks for PR. That's not a thing. Did I pull the curtain back too far?
No, I mean, the other thing that seems to be the consensus, I don't want to give anything away. And again, I haven't watched it yet because we kind of wait till everybody in the household can be together at the same time to watch it. So we're going to watch it tonight. Anyway, whereas everything that Marvel has done cinematically and even in the TV or Disney Plus shows has been very committed to continuity, consistency.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Religiously. Okay. Loki seems, because of the structure of the show, because of the subject matter of the show, because of what it involves, they can play around more loosely with continuity because it, and I don't want to give too much away, because it involves time.
Yeah. Time travel.
And the management of multiple, let's say, timelines. I won't say anything else. That gives them some flexibility to be able to play more. It's more of a sandbox that they can do things that they have not been able to do in the other movies and shows. And that seems to be one of the things that the critics seem to like about this show, that it's a little more freewheeling in that respect as far as where the stories go.
I don't know if I think, to a degree, but it's definitely, if you're a Marvel Cinematic Universe fan, you like the movies, you like what the brand is doing and the stories they're telling, this is definitely going to be a series you're going to watch before you see the sequel to Doctor Strange, because it's very heavily leaning into the events or what we can expect. Even the language that's used in it is there. And again, I won't give away. I have seen it. I watched it 3 times to kind of, because I enjoyed it that much. It leans into other franchises as well. It leads into Blade Runner. It leans into Iron Man, the first movie. It has all of these callbacks.
Did you say Blade Runner?
Yeah, actually, yes. And so there's these like Easter eggs that are about that with that in regards to it, which is not, you can see it. You'll see it when you watch it. You'll be like, oh yeah, they're kind of like giving an homage to that.
Oh, tipping their hat.
Yeah, tipping the hat. They're not like stealing from it. They're not mentioning it. It's not that. It's just the tip of a hat. It's really well done. Tom Hiddleston is actually the executive producer of this show. So if you don't know who Tom Hiddleston is, shame on you. He is a really amazing English actor, does really fascinating impressions. You can watch him do some impressions of Al Pacino and Robert De Niro on the Graham Norton show in front of Robert De Niro. So
that takes guts.
Yeah, exactly. His favorite movie is Heat, which is a really good movie. There's a scene between him, Robert De Niro, and Al Pacino in there, and he actually reenacts that scene with his impressions again with Robert De Niro next to him. So he's a great.
And if you don't know, Hiddleston plays Loki, right?
Yes, Tom Hiddleston plays Loki. Now, the person that does the music is very important in storytelling, branding, and kind of communicating what you do. Because remember, these shows, it's a brand. We're talking about a business that's selling a product. So to go with that, you've got sound that is as much as important as the visuals and the story and the narrative and everything else that goes with it. So the sound is created by a woman who's very talented, and I really apologize to those out there that may enjoy to know that. But I'll tell you this: she egged Simon Cowell on America's Got Talent. That's who did the score for this Disney Plus show, Loki. It's very well done, and when you listen to that, you'll also understand what I mean by giving a tip of the hat to Blade Runner. So it is very well produced. It is very well done and written. I don't necessarily agree with the critics that it's lumbering at the beginning. I don't believe that at all. This thing picks up immediately within, the moments of that. It's something that you're going to watch it and you're going to want to watch it again if you're a good fan. Not a good fan, like I'm a good fan, but like you're an extreme fan is what I meant, so because you're going to pick up,
Hardcore.
yeah, you're going to pick up all kinds of things as you see it. And there's a lot of things that are happening and actions that are happening because if you're a Marvel Cinematic Universe fan, but if you're also a Marvel Comics fan, and just within that franchise, there's a lot of eggs and mentions and things you're going to go, I know what they're talking about. So you'll have that as well. So, and that makes it really fun. They do a really good balance of telling a story, having fun, and still keeping kind of the seriousness of what's going on. So I thought that's why it was very well produced. So it's a good mention for the Nerd News, Mitch. There you go, everybody. That was the nerd news. So let's get into the main topic because everybody out there is like, why can't I make my logo bigger?
Can.
I mean,
you can do what you want.
Yeah, this ain't Russia. You can do what you want. But
now they're listening.
Probably. That's okay. Uncle Joe's going to go visit Putin and tell him what he thinks, and so that I can get away with that. Anyway, so why it's not as important as you think. Like, after building thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of websites over the years, because I don't know, I haven't really kept count, but, I've been doing it since 2008, so it's been a while. And it has always come up that the logo would like to be larger. And the problem usually lies in that you have a screen, you probably bought a Hewlett Packard, or you probably bought, I don't know what screens now, because I mostly use my laptop and have for years, but whatever you bought and what you're looking through, the other person obviously doesn't have that. Even if it may be the same size, you've got different screen resolutions and things like that across multiple brands of monitors. And so you're typically looking at a size of something or a clarity of something that is just for you. So that's where the request comes from. And it's not really thinking about outside users and other people and what they see. So we're kind of go down through the list because I don't want to jump ahead, because number 3 on the list is sort of the biggest pet peeve for me, because I'm more about the users than I am about your experience. Because even though it's your website, and yes, you should have a say in how you expect to be presented because it's your brand, but we'd like for you to think about these things. So Mitch, you want to take the first one on the list?
I guess I should have the show notes in front of me, shouldn't I?
Yeah, it kind of helps. But I'll tell you what it is. It's your brand, but it's not a logo.
Well, your brand is not the logo, right?
Yeah.
Your brand. I mean, I've always looked at, this crosses platforms. It crosses mediums. I mean, it can be print, it can be digital, whatever the case. I mean, your logo is always pretty much served to be like your signature. Okay. Mm-hmm. Let's say you write a letter to someone. Do people still write letters? I don't know. But you're writing a letter to somebody, and you usually sign it with your signature so that they can get verifies that you are who you say you are. It gives some authenticity. But you don't write the letter because you want to show people your signature. You write the letter because you want to express an idea, a message, a feeling to someone. That's the most important thing. It crosses over into marketing, advertising, your website. The most important thing is the message that you're conveying. It's not your signature. Your signature just says, this is what we believe, and this is who just said it, and this verifies that we are who we say we are. So it's always been the case because I go back pre-internet. It's always been the case that people get locked into this. It is what it is. It is what it is. It's always been the case that there's been this unfair emphasis placed on the logo, okay, for a lot of different reasons. People feel very close to it. They almost see it as a reflection of themselves. And it can be the president of the company. It can be the chairman of the board. It can be the marketing manager in a mid-level management position. But they almost see that as a direct reflection on their importance, and that they put this, they kind of imbue that logo with doing a job that it isn't supposed to do. therefore giving it more emphasis than it really requires. And I had a teacher in college when I was in my last level of advertising, and he owned his own agency here in Louisville. And a lot of my philosophy comes from him. And basically he would present to a client, and the client will say, well, can we make the logo bigger? And he said, well, eventually it gets to the point where, well, just scrap whatever else you've got on the ad, just print the logo. If that's what you want, if that's what's important to you, that's what we can do. But the point being that you don't want people to interact with your marketing because of your logo. That doesn't tell them anything. You want them to interact with your marketing because of the message you're trying to convey, and to get a response that's favorable to your brand from that user. A logo is not going to do that. All it's going to say is, this is who said it. So a long answer to a short question. Your logo is just basically your signature at the end of your letter. This is who just said this.
Well, there you go.
Here's the episode. We'll see y'all next week.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. There's the exit music that we don't use, and that's it. Yeah. No, well said. I'm gonna probably address the second one. That way John can have the third one, actually, because I know it's more product centered and the reason why. And I think John can be, since he's more or less in that chair, he can kind of get his brain around that one. It has some words definitely to share. Not that it's a soapbox for any of us. It's just, it is what it is. What we specialize in a way. The second one is bigger isn't better. It's not here, not in this case. It's the internet. So it's going to change size anyways, based on the screen you're viewing it on. So if I'm on an iPhone and your logo is ginormous, I've got to swipe past that a lot to just get to what I want to read. It's about you and what you do. Cause I need an answer question. I need a service. I need a problem solved. And if your logo's in the way and it stays there, because they typically keep the logo at the top of the screen on these browsers mobilely. If it's ginormous, well, now I've lost a quarter of the screen because of your logo. And if I turn it this way, I've lost more than half. So if you're on YouTube and watching this, you can actually see what I'm using as an example. But that's really why a lot of web designers, when they hear that, cringe, because they know that the web is about presenting information succinctly, clearly, and whatever's above the fold is the most important and the very first thing that people see. So to Mitch's point, what he was making was, it's a signature at the end of a letter. But the way websites are designed, they're at the top, typically in the upper left. Your nav is usually in the upper right. But you kind of want to get that stuff out of the way if you've got important stuff. Now, you can stick it and keep it sticky at the top, so it's there on whatever device, but your developer needs to code it in a way to where it minimizes itself to allow for the rest of that screen to have enough space for the reader to be able to engage with it. Because most people don't know there's a screen reader, or that the iPhone has an option particularly for that you tap and it wipes out all the other images and just gives you copy. A lot of people don't know that those things are there. So, you have to remember that the user is just, they've got it on their phone, and once they open it up in that window, they're not going to take another action other than to swipe up with their thumb or finger. So it's very important to kind of realize that bigger is not always better. And that's why, because we are in the mobile age and have been for 10
Long
years
time now.
Yeah, iPhone came out in 2007. So yeah,
It's
time to
it's so interesting how the whole idea of making the logo bigger, that problem, how the argument we've been trying to make for years as to why you don't want to, now it's become even more so, because of the fact that you've got multiple screen sizes people are viewing things on. And you have to be able to adapt to all these multiple platforms and applications and screens. So it's only compounded that message that it's even harder now to try to make an argument as to why you need to make the logo bigger.
Yeah. I mean, for me, in my opinion, that's why I got away from, certain ways than in my philosophy and how building sites, especially what's in the what we call the hero area or above the fold, which is the piece of the site you see if you're on a laptop or screen. What you see before scrolling is the fold. What is there is still important. A lot of people even hate that term, the fold, but it is what it is because it's the first thing that's presented before any action is taken. If you're loading we have clients that want a video to play. We have clients that want animations there, which, that's great and that's nice, but, does it really lend to what you're trying to achieve with your goal? That's really what needs to be asked. And it's most important. Because if it interrupts any of that usage for that user, because everybody's got a different ISP, internet service provider, for those that don't know that acronym, and you may not be paying for that high speed internet. You may have a slow internet. So as developers, we always try to plan for the low end users because we know that if we don't get that information within the milliseconds in front of them, they're gone. They're going someplace else. So that's something else to kind of to think about. We recently met with a close friend of ours, Jordan Clements from GLI, and give him a shout out to you, Jordan. You can also check previous episodes of our podcast where Jordan talks about LinkedIn and social selling and things like that. It's a really great episode to look at. But we kind of discussed with him, what we know about development, what I know about WordPress and the history and all that stuff. And, he made mention that I should talk about it. And John brought up a great point. He's like, well, Jason, it's too techie. And it is. So trying to break it down, in small bits like this to be able to say, this is why. There's reasons, may not be understood fully, but there's reasons why making your logo bigger could actually harm you and not help. So anyways, third point, when they go to your website, John, you can read the third point if you have it in front of you. If not, I will.
I sure don't.
I will read it.
Swinging it today. Me and Mitch are underprepared people.
No, you may be underprepared, but there's a good reason for everybody out there that knows this is they busy. They do jobs. We all do
more than podcasting.
Yeah, they all do. Anyway, your audience doesn't really care about your logo. They're interested in your product. Your message and your tone for your brand are just more important.
I think that about sums it up. But and I think what Mitch, was getting at is pretty much the same thing. Your logo is important. I don't think we're not saying it's an unimportant asset. It's arguably one of the most important brand assets you have, if not the most important, because that's what sticks in people's brains as a memorable icon. And that's what they're going to see on every piece of creative theoretically. So it needs to evoke some type of connection to what you said, but that's the point, is it's just a connector. It's something that has to be memorable enough to connect them to the message that you conveyed, more extensively through your other channels. So, I mean, to me, I think there's also an argument for the logo being too small when you get into mobile. I've seen a lot of websites where you start scrolling or even when you first get there, the logo's like microscopic. And I don't think that's beneficial either, even though it might be a little easier to get past. You've kind of lost that connection, the bridge between the brand and what it, what you can latch onto from an iconography standpoint, and then the message. But, like you're saying, people come to websites because they have a problem. Your logo is never going to solve their problem, although it might trigger a memory of why you solve a certain problem. And that's important. But, getting them into the strategic message that you're trying to convey, getting them into, highlighting pain points so that they know that you're someone who understands their problem. Yeah, that's the goal of your website, at least. And you're never going to close the sale necessarily unless you're e-commerce. You're not necessarily going to close the sale on your website, and you're not going to, get every single piece of message in their face adequately in that environment. But you've got to get them to understand that you get their pain point. You have a product or service that can fill that need, and you give them options to get in touch with you. And your logo does none of those things. Like Mitch was saying, it serves a very, very important purpose, and we talk about it all the time, Mitch, with clients, especially during the logo design process. It needs to be recognizable. It needs to be memorable. It needs to adequately represent your brand and what it stands for. But nobody's going to buy because of your logo ever, unfortunately. I wish it was that easy, but I mean, to me, it just boils down to what Mitch was saying. It's kind of the icing on the cake. It's the connector that people are going to recognize as your brand gets bigger, as your brand becomes more evolved, that's going to be a unifying piece of creative on everything. That's like, okay, this company does this because I remember the connection.
Yeah.
It's interesting. This brings to mind a story. This brings to mind a story it's the complete opposite of make the logo bigger. We actually were talking to a marketing manager a few years back, and this was a company that was doing a ton of direct mail, a ton of newspaper advertising, a lot of direct response. And there were a lot of things they wanted to convey to their prospects in their marketing advertising, the really hot button points that would get people to pick up the phone or go to the web or whatever the case. He actually asked, and I'm hoping it was partially tongue in cheek anyway, because we're saying, well, you've got all this stuff in here now. Okay, so where do we put your logo? He goes, do we have to put our logo in there? I mean, and this was primarily I think it was newspaper advertising at the time, but it was the complete opposite side of that spectrum. So you're listing all these great benefits and of your brand, and you're doing a great job in this material. We are doing a great job in this material of expressing the value of your brand and giving people a method to respond, but they do need to know who they're responding to, because they may walk away for a while and then come back to this, and they may forget, what was that brand again? Who was that? What was that company again?
Mm-hmm.
Then you've lost them. Lost them.
Not even just recall. I mean, that's a big important element, is being able to recall who said it and what the ad was about. But it's also, when you're in your first year or two of business, you're not really thinking about the idea of your logo and your brand having equity. But in 10, 15 years, there are small businesses, mid-sized businesses in Louisville that have equity. They're not a Nike, they're not an Adidas level of notoriety, but at least where I live, I know that that's a brand that's been around for a long time. They're trustworthy, things like that. So your logo eventually, and your name will eventually have that equity if you stick with it long enough and play the cards right. And that logo can carry that equity. You see a Nike check mark, and hardly anybody's going to become a Nike. We know that. It's not a comparison. It's just an analogy to say that your brand can have that level of equity even on just a local level. It doesn't have to be global, multinational corporation.
Yeah, because you put the Nike check mark on a T-shirt, it's probably $25. You take the Nike check mark off the T-shirt, it's worth $10.
Yeah, pretty much.
And that's why it's like you're investing in something that one day becomes that. People will want it. When demand increases, well, your prices do for it, because the demand is. I mean, that's the way it works. Mm-hmm. Making the investment and making sure that logo is properly represents who you are. The size of it on mediums is a tertiary issue. It's just not something that is to be addressed at a jump when you're in the visual design process. I think that the other thing is too, as events become more public and we open up and we start to see each other, interact face to face, one of the main things that are going to be visible that people need to pay attention to is the famous business card. Logo placement on that, orientation of it. That's another medium that I think we'll start to see more of. Been going to a few network events, and they have not gone away, folks. They were dominant. They flying around like I wish they were money flying around, like make it rain. It was really funny. So, be thinking about sales collateral. If you're curious about that, you can go to nerdbrandagency.com/collateral. If you don't know how to spell collateral, like I often sometimes don't, because I do rely on a spell checker, you can go and click the link below in the YouTube video here. As we post this on YouTube, you'll find the link below. Or you can, again, contact this guy right here, Jonathan, at nerdbrandagency.com, and discuss any of your sales collateral print needs or graphic design needs, because to kind of echo a little bit about from the last podcast we did with Jason Bernard is how important that is. for your branding and its presence. It's, again, we marked that as a chapter in that video. You can go back and watch the previous video on NerdBrand or previous podcast. If you want to listen to it, you can do that. And he and Mitch have a really good back and forth about that. It's really funny but very, very, very informative. And so we are here to help with that as a branding agency. That is a part of what we do. One of the most I've been latching onto it, and Mitch and John are probably going to tell me to stop quoting it, but I love it so much because it's so true. It's so succinct. It's like, marketing is like asking for a date. Branding is what gets you the yes. And basically what that means is branding is the one that tells you to, put on a shirt with buttons like I did today and make sure that it's ironed like I did today and shave like I did not do today.
Didn't do the thing.
But get a haircut. That's branding. That's what it does. It makes you presentable so that when you go and ask for the date, you get it. Because all marketing has to work with is whatever you throw in its lap. That's what they do. They'll do it very well, but they need more.
We're talking about logo size and all that thing. We're talking about things that lend credibility to your brand, that makes your brand look legitimate, that makes people take it seriously. And part of building a brand that can express those things, that can express confidence, is making sure that you've got your priorities down. And I think that's kind of in a tangential way. That's kind of what we've been getting at, I think, on this topic is you want to prioritize what elements are most important when presenting your brand in any medium. Message is always, always number one. Your logo is not your message. It's comes at the end of the message, or maybe the beginning and the end, as in the case of the web, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's priorities. It's having your priorities straight when presenting your brand in whatever medium you're presenting it in.
If you want to make your agency or your web designer real happy, ask if you can make the hero headline bigger. That's the message, why don't we make that bigger? Minimize the logo a little bit. You get a little bit more room to make your statement, your value proposition right there front and center. That's what's going to get people to move. That's what's going to get them to dig deeper on the site, scroll down, whatever. Again, I don't think we're discounting the importance of the user seeing that logo and going, oh, I know who that is. I know what they do. But it goes beyond that, and so it's like you were saying, Mitch, it's having a priority. Do we have our message in line before we worry about the size of the logo? Because if not, you're just putting energy in the wrong place. Right. It's not going to
exactly
have
but
a positive outcome.
And you mentioned earlier, John, about how the logo being too small on mobile devices and how that defeats it. So how do you get around that? Well, you have a professional design your site. You have a professional handle your logo, its placement, your ads. Because when and it's understandable that you do it yourself because you don't have the budget. It's understandable. It happens, all businesses starting out got to deal with what they got. You go to war with the army you have. But at some point, you've got to do it professionally, because if there is a too small, it's like the Three Bears. It's too hot. It's too cold. It's just right. The professional is going to know just right every time. And you've got to step away and let them do that. And it's invaluable because of how it makes you look. Because there are people out there that go, they've had somebody do that. And then they can look and see they did that themselves. So, and if you're in those buckets, we'd like to help you get it just right. Look like you're going to say something, John.
Well, we're really talking about, in a lot of ways, responsive web design. And I don't think a lot of people, naturally, they've not been on the back end of a website project. They've not managed it or been around web designers and developers and seen the level of detail and the necessary level of testing and things like that against the different viewports of the different devices to make sure that it doesn't look weird in this browser or this iPhone or this Android device or the iPad or a desktop.
Right.
And there's, with laptops, you get a bunch of different screen sizes on top of having, a lot of people have a secondary monitor like you were getting at earlier. That's, 21 inches and everything looks fundamentally different compared to a 13-inch monitor. So there's a lot of detail of why it's not really a DIY job. Because if you're not experiencing that, or you don't have the tools to run through those tests, some of those viewports are going to be wrong almost inevitably. and you might be able to do a decent job hitting 80% of them. But what if the 20% that you missed are people who, are really are good customers, and they're kind of just turned off by this bad user experience? So I think that's a key that a lot of people, they just haven't been on the back end. They're definitely not going to be aware of that. I wasn't until I was on the back end of working with designers and developers. So
yeah, it's a very intensive, like developing a website. It's not the same as designing a website, and it's very intensive, both of them. And so you have to have a kind of a mix of both. You got to have a budget that plans for both, and where you put more emphasis depends on what you're after. If you want more functionality, you want more connectivity to other apps and other things, then you're going to be more intensive on development. You need to plan for that in your cycle. If you just want to look really pretty, well, then you need to plan for that on the design side, and because that's all visual design. That's why I've been using the term visual design more, because web design gets to be a very ambiguous term to people. They just kind of think a web designer can make a website and also help me figure out how to send an email from my phone. Well, no, web designers don't know how to do this. They don't have a clue. Like, I'm like you. Nope. So, but if you need somebody for that, we're happy to recommend someone. But yeah, it's a very good point to bring up. Before the podcast, as you were saying that, John, I've been going through Slack messages because I had it turned off, and it pinged me. John shared a picture because as we use Zoom to do the podcast, very low techy in a way. We are going to be, now that things are opening up, hopefully we'll actually go to a location in a studio to start doing this podcast recording. So we'll still be doing the Zoom thing for guests because, we get guests on the show from Paris, France to LA to whatever. So kind of makes it hard to get in a room with them. But John's computer was rebooting and he said, "I'm coming to the show, but Steve Jobs has other plans," and it's just your rebooting.
I just wanted to restart because I didn't want Zoom to lag and all that stuff. So I guess it had some kind of updates to run. I don't know. It took forever.
Yeah. Oh, it's hilarious. Yeah. Apple has a lot of plans for everybody. We're not going to go into a deep dive about it, but if you're out there and you're like, "Hey, you guys do marketing. What do you think about the whole email iOS 15 thing?" Well, we're thinking about it like everybody else.
It's significant. I mean, I think we should do an episode coming up on it and have some folks who have, maybe some hands-on expertise and strong opinions, and hopefully resolutions to some of the chaos that Apple's new privacy settings are causing for marketers between, not being able to adequately track conversions from platforms like Facebook to the new iOS 15, like you just said, supposedly blocks open data on emails, which doesn't seem like a big significant factor because open rate is kind of like it's a vanity metric to a lot of people, but it's the basis of a lot of segmenting. It's very common to resend an email to people who did not open, or people who opened but didn't take the action that you wanted them to take to really kind of boost sales and get additional messages in front of them. And if you don't have that open data to segment upon, we're all kind of we're all entering a new world of digital in general, and email and social advertising especially, and digital advertising in general are going to get just chaotic over the next few years. That it's going to cause some pendulum shifts to maybe traditional stuff, more organic brand experiences, things like that, which is really what we're working on.
Yeah. So if you're out there and you're planning on engaging in marketing and advertising, branding, whatever term you want to apply to it, we'd love to talk to you. You can visit us at nerdbrandagency.com. Again, talk to this guy here, Jonathan at nerdbrandagency.com. And because there needs to be some more creativity applied to advertising and marketing initiatives. You cannot, and I just love this analogy John came up with. We're not a gumball machine. You can't put a quarter in and get gumballs out. Because I think that's been actually the industry for quite some time, is like, well, we're going to do all these things, blah, blah, blah. And we do it every month. And then we tell you how it went. That's not going to work anymore, I don't think. The world, as you said, is changing, and the tools they've been good for a while to be used as they have been used, but there has to be now more thought put into that. And as the more thought goes in, creative people like Mitch and other designers come in, put their ideas in there from a visual design point, and now you have a completely new way of doing something on the very same channel that's existed for years, but has to happen in order to reach who it is you're trying to reach. And that does increase costs, that does increase and change your approach entirely. So,
Yeah, I
got any
think.
questions?
I mean, for me, it's like, you can't fall asleep right now. Right now is a very critical moment for every brand manager, every business owner, just like it was kind of in 2009 to 2012 when performance marketing, where you paid a publisher, a Facebook or a display ad network to place an ad, and it was based on the amount of clicks or impressions you got, and that was it was performance based. We're kind of going away from that because cookies are going away, because data regulations are coming into play. Um, it's and nobody really, I mean, I'll be totally frank, I don't know what the hell's going to happen the next 2 or 3 years. We're trying to figure it out, but there is a big shift happening as a result of some of the tech changes that are occurring, just like it did when Facebook and Twitter and all those guys came about in around 2010, 2011. It's that significant, in my opinion, and it's something that really business owners and brand managers really have to keep their hands on. And I know a lot of them are still trying to play catch up with with what happened in the last 10 years. But you kind of get a chance to reset maybe and get back to some of the things that maybe you do feel more comfortable with, because a lot of traditional organic types of campaigns are I think going to be the way to go, more effective. Given that the data is getting very messy.
Yeah, and
It's
organic doesn't mean free. I kind of want to keep emphasizing that, because I think when people hear organic, they think free. It's not free. It requires somebody to create something, to develop something, to strategize and implement and execute that, and do it well in the arena that is very loud, with many other people doing the same thing, maybe in a different way, but still. So I think that also needs to be brought out, that it's not it can't it's not is affordable. It can be affordable if you do it the right way, or you do it depending on what your tactics are. But at the end of the day, you are in competition with the world. And as it comes back online, as we get post pandemic, I mean, it's going to get very loud and very busy. And that's why all these tech companies are making these changes, because they know their platforms they're already getting slammed now. You can turn on the news and kind of see that from that perspective. So what was you going to say, Mitch?
I think, no, it's, I just kind of follow back on what John was talking about. It to me, it reemphasizes something that's been true as long as we've been doing marketing and advertising. It's about having a smart mix of where your brand is being promoted, being marketed, being advertised. And a good agency, a good marketing partner is always watching the environment, is always watching the landscape, so that adjustments can be made. Because as long as people have been advertising things, there's always been changes. There's always been new developments. Something new's always been coming along. So there's always been this need to have a partner alongside you that can kind of see down the road a little bit further and can help you make adjustments as time progresses, because nothing stays the same.
Yeah, it's like
right?
Platforms are going this way, and many places and strategies go this way, and they try to do this. Again, for those listening, I'm holding my hand in one way and perpendicular to my hand is going the other, and I'm smacking into my palm with the tips of my fingers. I have to do that for the audio listeners, because they're like, I don't know what's going on. But anyways, yeah, that's typically the tactics. That's typically the strategies that I've seen over the last 10 years. You got to move like this. You got to move in parallel. You got to realize where things are going. Like Google's natural language processing is not new. It's actually been something they've been working on for a while. So the Google Mum update is not like, here it is, surprise. Not really. I mean, it's been something they've been working on for quite some time. And again, if you want to know what that is, you can go to our previous podcast episode with Jason Bernard and watch that. And I'm doing the same hand gesture as well as he is. That's where I took it from. So, but anyways, that's typically what your agency needs to do. It needs to be aware that the platforms are going this direction, so we need to pivot and change and move in that direction with it, instead of trying to attack it perpendicularly at a point in time where that's a static strategy and move to do on a platform that is 100% dynamic and moving forward always. And that is why. So you have to have an agency that's aware of that.
It's a matter. Mediums change, platforms change.
Mhm.
The basic principles don't.
Yeah, I love what John said in the previous. I keep saying the previous episode. Like, I don't want you to watch this one. Go back and watch the other one. But it go. John, you had a really good point that you made about that. I mean, you were just like, if something crashes and goes down, you're kind of stuck in the wind. You didn't say it this way. I'm paraphrasing really a lot, but essentially, if something happens to Google and you put all your money and your eggs in it,
It's still a mistake. A lot of people got attracted to that when Facebook pages were useful. We put it that way. They're not super useful anymore, but when they were useful, I mean, it was a legit silver bullet. Like, you could go on Facebook, put out a promotion or a sell, or just share something about your company, and for free get 20,000 people to see it.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't that hard. But, and then so a lot of people naturally, they're like, I don't even need a website anymore. I've got a Facebook page, and that's where all my customers are, all my attention. And that's great as a channel, but you don't own it. It did change. We saw everybody get the rug pulled out from underneath them, and you can, complain and moan to Facebook and about the societal woes and, and all the trouble they caused in that regard. It was a bait and switch in a way. But it's going to happen on pretty much any platform. It's all rented. But at the end of the day, the areas you have the most control, your website, your email list, your texting lists, those are the areas where you need to invest heavily and keep, those platforms will change too, as we're seeing with email, but you still own that list. You still have that contact. It might get more difficult in certain ways, but it's probably never going to be the case where GoDaddy rips your website out from underneath you. Or Gmail just stops accepting your emails. I mean, they're more reliable channels than building everything, on top of a social platform, or, putting all your resources into just organic SEO.
No one medium is a panacea.
Yeah, it's about distributing content. It's not about trying to dominate like a platform in that sense anymore. It's, these are distribution channels, and you've got to be able to understand that social media is a channel, not a strategy. It's a channel. That's all it is. It's not content. It's none of that. You gotta, people try breaking people away from that, because I think a lot of people have kind of, just gotten their head into that are either new to it, don't understand it, or that's just the way it's been for all these years in marketing. Is like, oh, got to be on Facebook. Really? Do you? Have you ever really thought about that? Everybody, I think it's really funny, and all the things that happen in the news is like, Facebook, Twitter, everybody gets all this crap about like what goes on there, what's posted. Nobody talks about Reddit. Oh, Reddit just been chugging along.
I know.
It's got problems.
As massive as they are, and as kind of, off kilter as they are with some of the content, it's incredible that they seem to float under the radar.
Yeah.
It was Reddit and YouTube were the only two social platforms that saw any growth from like 2019, year over year, 2019 through 2020. Those were the only two platforms besides TikTok, but that didn't really have a baseline before 2020.
Yeah.
But, Facebook, I think Facebook flatlined. Instagram actually went down. Twitter's, I think flatlined and maybe grew just a little bit, but nothing notable. So, yeah, those channels that are, but Reddit's an animal. Don't just jump in there and start spamming your business. You'll get, you'll get crucified.
Yeah, Reddits are owned by other people, not necessarily Reddit, So, I mean, Reddit has rules that you need to follow, just like any other platform. If you break them, you're gone. But, the subreddits are people that want to talk about that topic, that thing. And if you jump in there with an ad, organic ad, just type it in and post it about you're kicked off. Because, and it's not necessarily the called moderators, but the bot that you can use to create, if it picks up certain keywords, it just automatically will kick you off and send a message that the moderator has chosen to send, however nice or foul it may be. So no, Reddit is not another thing to just, if you hear this, don't jump in, don't do that. You could really wreck yourself and your brand and your name, and it could get ugly. So that's kind of the way social media is, though. Now you have to really think about, it goes back to what we said about branding and messaging. What are you going to say? How do you say it? And, you've got to really, really strategize and think those things through. And that's kind of what we're here for. So check out the podcast, nerdbrandagency.com/podcast. You can find us on Spotify. You can find us on Google Podcasts. You can also find us on our main platform on our site. We are on YouTube. Continue to like and subscribe and give us those views so that we can get that vanity URL so that we can be called at NerdBrand Agency on YouTube as well. But, we appreciate all of our fans and all of our listeners. You know who you are. We want to give a special shout out to Dan Ashby from Chick-fil-A, who gave us free chicken. Well, Mitch, I'll make it up to you because I know you didn't get any free chicken. I'll make it up.
We got a card with free chicken sandwich.
Yeah, we did. We actually did. We got a card for free chicken sandwich, and I will make sure, Mitch, that we can. I'll take you to Chick-fil-A. Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Follow and connect with Daniel Ashby on LinkedIn if you're in Louisville, and he does, I don't know if it's daily or weekly, but he does giveaways to 15 people, or actually 30 if you tag a coworker. Bring some nice catering as Chick-fil-A is trying to push their new catering model and business. So connect with that guy. He's friendly.
Yeah. So inadvertently, this podcast is sort of sponsored by, no, it's not really sponsored by Chick-fil-A, but we
might get sued if you say that.
Yeah. Yeah. You never really, don't give them ideas, but yeah, but we did appreciate meeting Dan and him coming by. That was a really, really nice personal touch because most times brands, of course, are faceless entities. And so we wanted to say, thank you, Dan, for doing that. And, take some time to talk with us as well while you were there on John's porch.
NerdBrand headquarters.
NerdBrand HQ. Yeah, there is an HQ. Appointment only.
NerdBrand global headquarters.
If that.
Anyway, like and subscribe to this video. Give us the love. Thank you all for listening. And remember, everybody, keep your nerd brand strong.